session. My name is Madison Evans. I am one of the summit leaders with SIFPAC, helping with programming and logistics. And I am so happy to be here today to present to you this afternoon's session, It Takes a Village, Food Sovereignty in Chicago's South Suburbs. We have with us today Celie Davis of Just Roots Chicago, Reverend Melody Seaton of Grace United Church of Christ, and Clinton Coates, who's the farm manager of It Takes a Village. Before I pass off the virtual microphone, I am going to play just an accessibility video for everyone. So if you don't mind, just hanging out, and it'll start in just a moment or so.
Farm. They were a great support in helping us get everything started. There's also the Conservation Foundation's Working Farms Fund and some current Windy City incubator farmers. So there's a lot of energy. And actually, if you want to switch, I think one slide over. One more, actually. Perfect. Thank you. So there's a lot of energy in the neighboring communities and again, just down the street. So thinking about farming differently than conventional, and instead with our vision, we think of it as community farming, but also generally just as sustainable farming. So speaking of community farming, It Takes a Village, we like to consider as a vehicle for larger change. And so instead of single crop, tractor-based growing, as I'm sure most of us think of as farming, we want to center biodiversity and people. So that looks like different access and opportunities that come through our programs. And so community farm, the way we understand it further, is a mix between community gardening and farming as the farm work and where the food goes remains community-based, while also feeding and supporting at scale, like a farm, unlike a garden. So thinking about kind of the mixture of those two, so community gardening and farming at scale, and then making sure that everything is community-based. So with the theme of the summit itself, thinking about future-proofing, so how we can address how we use land, water, energy, and have a movement towards sustainability of our resources, ourselves, each other, and then as we come together in community. So thinking about the sustainability now and 7 generations ahead. So you'll see here, these 3 bullet points are major pillars of the work that we do, is hyperlocal organic food access, as well as education and job training and community building. And I'll speak to those as we move forward with the slides. Cool. So healthy food access, you can see a few things pictured here. We have curly kale growing, collard greens growing, some freshly harvested hot peppers, as well as the farm stand and CSA distribution that's happening at It Takes a Village. So up to 50,000 pounds of fresh organic produce is grown annually once the farm is, once it is fully built out. So that includes outdoor and ground growing, indoor growing, as well as raised bed growing. And seeing the kale and collards there, we want to make sure that the produce we're growing is culturally affirming. And so what we've learned over this past year and in the previous years as we gathered surveys and information directly through conversations, as well as produce distributions themselves, kale and collards are the #1 crops that folks want to see, as well as peaches. So those are, because thinking about like how we're going to add an orchard and the ways we want to develop that makes it as cultural affirming as possible. Peaches are one of the things that we haven't had, but we will coming in the coming years. And then thinking about the produce itself. So we want to make sure that the majority of it, or at least half, stays within the neighborhood. All stays within 5 to 10 miles if we're talking about the South Suburbs. And that looks like both donation and sales. And so up to 50% of the produce that we grow goes to donation. And that includes the Grace United Church of Christ food pantry that Rev Mel was speaking to, a food pantry down the street, as well as public and senior housing, health clinics. And then sales is through our farm stand, like I said, is pictured here, as well as community supported agriculture. So that's where folks actually have a subscription and then receive produce on a weekly basis, which we have, our registration is currently open if anybody is looking for direct access from It Takes a Village community farm itself. And then if we could switch slides. Great. So our second pillar is education. And so this looks like a number of programs. What you see pictured here is centered around our volunteer program. So we have volunteers come out regularly throughout the week. We have school groups join us on the farm. And those school groups include field trips with educational content from anything from sustainable gardening practices to nutrition and health. Oh, hold on one second. And then, sorry, I accidentally exited out of the slide. And then from there, we have two more formalized programs, so workforce development, as well as re-entry jobs training. So the workforce development includes youth employment program called Growing Young Leaders. And so what we found over the first year of growing at It Takes a Village, there's a lot of enthusiasm from the local youth to actually get their hands not only dirty, but to be employed. And so last year we employed a couple students in the area, and we're looking to formalize it this year. So to not only add more students to it, but also include workshops and other opportunities for leadership development, from harvest facilitation to financial literacy mentorship, so that they can learn skills, gain experience, and then also explore their next steps. So whether that means they're looking to go to college, vocational, or even with both of those, actually see what opportunities are available in urban ag itself. And then the reentry jobs training that I mentioned. So that was actually part of Reverend Mel's original vision for the space. And so instead of rehabbing houses, it is now through the hard skills farming. So in 2025, we plan to roll out a reentry jobs training program and have our partners kind of lead the effort in soft skills training, from interviewing, resume building, and more. And then for the farm to kind of serve as a site for that direct jobs training. Then if you want to switch the slides for me. Cool. So the third pillar is community building. So everything mentioned so far kind of is within that vision, as well as community farm dinners, events like seedling distributions, and generally using the farm as a gathering space. So as you see pictured here on the far left is our open house from this past year. And so each year we kind of kick off the year with an event for neighbors to come by and to receive seedlings that we've grown, to engage with one another, and to kind of get involved with all the opportunities that we have coming up, so they can sign up for workshops, for yoga, for other events that are happening on the farm. And then this photo here on the far right is our community farm to table dinner. And so this was a great hit this past year, and we're really excited to expand it to more in the coming years. And so this brings general supporters, people from the area together to enjoy a meal and community, and that's directly from the farm. Thank you. Great. And so thinking about ways to get involved, this is kind of an overview, if you're looking at the slide, of the different ways that you can join us at It Takes a Village Community Farm. Like I mentioned, there's volunteer opportunities throughout the week, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. You can come out and take a tour, take tastings, walk away with produce from the farm stand, or sign up for a community-supported agriculture program. Join us for a community event, workshops, or visit some of the other small scale farms in the South Suburbs. That's a really good way to help increase momentum behind the work that we do, and that the work that we are also doing engaged with other farms in the area, as well as joining us through our newsletter. So just signing up to learn about upcoming events, including this year's community farm to table dinners. So we have a lot going on, and it's only been 1 year that the farm has been in existence. And so it's pretty incredible to see the amount of momentum we have just from this year alone, and then also where we're going from here. So kind of thinking about what we talked about, it's only going to become bigger and better in the years to come. And I'll pass it along to Clinton to talk about some of the farm operations and farm infrastructure.
All right. Greetings, everyone. I'm Clinton. I'm farm manager at It Takes a Village. And so It takes a village is surrounded by a variety of agricultural farmland. These farmlands grow predominantly industrial corn and soybeans, many times using genetically modified seeds, excessive tilling, single crop production, and synthetic fertilizers that are spread across the landmass. It Takes a Village is a multi-acre production farm. However, we differ from surrounding farmland that's in the area. So we're dedicated to sustainable practices and catering to needs of the environment and the land by using a variety of protocols and practices to cultivate the land, right? So growing diverse variety of crops beneficial that's beneficial to the environment with crop rotation that helps avoid disease issues, using only organic seeds, building healthy soil from amending beds and well-cultured compost. So adding good compost and good amendments to the soil. We practice pest management by using plant-based, natural occurring pesticides like neem from the neem, like neem oil from the neem tree, spices, using fencing for crops to protect the crops from animals and deer and rabbits and so on. We use organic fertilizers as well as cultured compost, as I mentioned earlier, to help water retention and attract beneficial organisms in the soil. We have incorporated a compost pile on site for scraps and weeds to sustainably recycle organic matter from the field. We practice very little tilling to no tilling to avoid damage to the beneficial organisms. We use pollinator plants to attract beneficial insects and help the growth process of the crops throughout the season. It Takes a Village Community Farm is located in an ethnically diverse neighborhood, so directly behind Grace Church. Being there, we do feel like we are a part of the church, a part of the community, and a part of the members of the congregation, to where eventually it feels like home. It feels like we're part of the entire process that's happening in the entire neighborhood and area that we are located at. I myself, as a farm manager, I'm definitely looking forward to working with the community and working with the kids and working with the groups and the volunteers and guests that shows up to the farm, so they can also ask questions and know that it's a community farm, and knowing that they're welcomed at all times. They can ask questions, they can get involved, get agricultural knowledge and experiences, and be able to get their hands dirty. And even if they've never been to a farm before, they have one right around the corner that they're welcome to come explore and introduce themselves. And we can work as a community to bring more attention and more knowledge to the people around in the area. And they can see the process of the farm, just how the farm works and how growing works, and how agriculture works with the environment. On the site, we have a 148 to 30-foot heated hoop house to maintain climate control and with fans and ventilation, protection from deer and other potential pests from damaging and eating the crops, to keep moisture in, to protect crops from extreme elemental activities or wind and the rain, and make the process grow more. And so we have a more flexible way of growing in the throughout the season. We could use farm extension. So the hoop house allows us to extend the growing season to the winter months. So with the winter months, it's an opportunity to have winter donations growing seedlings and in the spring and mid-season months. So we are looking to provide other gardeners and other other amateur farmers or growers or people who just interested in growing. So providing them with seedlings also. So we have a space for that. So we have been building out the farm phase. We've been building out the farm in phases. So in these phases, we build these phases to ensure that we are able to efficiently run the farm in the phase base so that we can move toward other elements of building. So therefore, we will start each one and we will not start the next phase until we complete the phase that we are working on at that time. So we have been, we broke ground in fall of 2021 in preparation for initial beds that are laid today. Then we began to build the soil with plots, with multi plots. We have 3 plots there on site at the moment, with volunteers and other people that was willing to help. From there, we began to sow plants of our first crops, cultivating the crops until we executed the first sales of donations and CSAs and a farm stand. We went further to building out the hoop house. So as we built out the hoop house on the site, we built it with a team effort with more volunteers, and the entire team had their hands in, and we did it together, which worked very well. We completed the hoop house and began to work on constructing 21 youth garden beds. So we'll have a youth garden program to where we have themed beds, pizza beds, and gumbo bed, and tea bed with herbs. We use center blocks to create these beds. Now we're looking forward to constructing a wash pack, brand new wash pack on site. So wash pack and processing station. Moving forward, then we are excited to have the opportunity to plant a 40-tree fruit tree orchard on site coming up in May, along with building another house, another hoop house, the same size as the first one, 148 feet by 30 foot, in late May, coming up in late May, along with building additional plots. So eventually we will have multiple more plots we'll be using for incubator opportunities and for more production space so that we can grow more food and more crops for the people in the food pantry and donation work. So we have a lot more to learn. We have a lot more to explore, a lot more people to bring on site, and a lot more that we are looking forward to doing in the near future. And growing in the South Suburbs, because it's well needed in the South Suburbs to bring more attention and raise awareness around the people that show that you can grow amount of food and crops in a residential area of the South Suburbs, which is well needed. And looking forward to working with the community and bringing these things to light in the future. And that's my time. Thank you very much.
Great. If anybody has any questions, thoughts, ideas, ways for us to collaborate, feel free to chime in or to send a message over chat.
All right, so it looks like we're having some questions come in, and keep them coming. But Lenore Bayer is asking, how was your infrastructure funded?
I can hop in if you want me to, and you can finish up. Initially, we wrote grants and we continue to write grants. But we've also been very fortunate in that organizations, as well as some of our sister churches, have given us large donations to help in this. They're very excited about what we're doing. It's a pretty novel idea for a church to have a farm. So yeah, so mostly donations and grants primarily. So maybe Celie, you can hop in with some more.
No, I think you covered it, Rev Mel. It's donations and grants for the most part, and then specifically where you spoke from, and then continuing, because each year there's further build out for It Takes a Village. And so the phases that Clinton mentioned, but also just general upkeep. So like there's the wash pack. So certain grants are specific for some of these projects, and then general maintenance comes through with others.
Well, I had a kind of a quick question too. I know you guys were talking about this hopeful orchard or fruit trees planting, and earlier you had mentioned peaches. Linked?
Yeah, so the peaches, we're excited to plant the orchard starting this May. And so we will have fruit production by, well, it depends on which fruit tree it is. And so within the next couple of years, and through surveys and community conversations, we learned that peaches are definitely what's desired by the community. And then also through our conversations with different folks in the area, that you can grow certain varieties of peaches and be able to provide those in the Midwest, which is really exciting. Clinton, do you have more to say about that?
That we are definitely looking forward to getting the community involved with planting the orchards with the trees, as it is a big project and it is open for the community to volunteer and come in and see how it's done and get experience with that. So I'm excited for that also.
Yeah, it looks like we have another question in terms of lease agreement for the land. Is it with the church or is it more informal?
I think it would probably be classified as informal. There is no lease agreement. It is I would say a true partnership. We share the load together, and that was from the very beginning. It was never that just Ruth would just come in and do everything and we wouldn't help at all. So it's a partnership, no lease agreement, because this helps the church and it helps the community. And so that's it.
One other question I see, well, in terms of trees attracting more beneficial insects, I don't know if Clinton, you have anything to add to that one?
That I'm not quite sure, but they do attract other beneficial insects. We will have a beehive on site in the near future, and depending on the tree, they do attract pollinators and beneficial insects as well. But I'm not quite sure of the details in that.
There's another question about going to the village, and it was well received. But did you have any pushback from community neighbors or running into any zoning issues, or are you still facing any issues with that?
Okay, I'm going to get my laugh out first. It was not an easy process, but it was not as bad, I guess, as it could have been. We did have to go before, well, first of all, we initially did a couple of meetings with the village trustees as well as the community, just to let them know what we were doing, to try to get some buy-in to what this was all about. But most importantly, to impress upon them how important and vital, how vital this would be for the community. And the fact that we give away 50% of the food. This is not something we're trying to make money from or get rich It's not going to happen. And it's not the vision behind it. But what we did not realize is all of the different zoning things that we had to go through. And Just Roots is based in Chicago. And so things are a little different in Chicago than they are in smaller villages. And yes, there was a little pushback, mostly from the officials. The neighbors were really great. We really did not have any problems from the neighbors. It was the elected officials that really had a hard time initially catching on to the vision. And also, this was new. This was very different. They hadn't had a special use permit or hadn't done a special use permit in many years. So they really had to do some research on how do we do this? How much does it cost? And all of those kind of things. So I'm thinking that some of the pushback was frustration about, you know, how this process was supposed to work.
And I think to Rev Mel's point, the permitting process, there were a lot more permits. So when thinking about going through Sauk Village versus being in Chicago, we think of Chicago as a place of a lot of back and forth when you're dealing with an alderman or the city in any type of way. But we experienced it much more actually in Sauk Village. And so, yeah, just bringing that into the conversation when thinking about the South Suburbs and expanding farming opportunities, peri-urban farming opportunities there.
Right, so another question we have is can kind of be answered in terms of the farm practices too, but is there potential to develop any community food scrap composting to build a more soil fertility?
You're muted, Clinton.
I believe in the future, not at the moment, but in the future, we are planning on opening up for volunteers or other individuals to contribute to the compost pile. Yes.
Yeah, so for right now with our CSA program, people have the option to bring their CSA food scraps back on a weekly basis. And so we do add that back into our system, as well as everything that's pulled and done directly on the farm. So zero waste when thinking about compost itself. But I'm wondering, which also thank you for the question, Howard. Howard's a great partner of ours. I'm wondering too, maybe Howard, if you want to put this in the chat, if you mean like doing it directly in our soil, so the compost that we have already developed, because then there's like food safety considerations. But yeah, feel free to follow up there if there's something else we're missing.
All right, well, the next question we have by Teresa is, so how much are the farm activities provided by volunteers versus the staff you have? And as if the volunteers are essential, do they receive any training?
Yes, this is a great question. So we receive around 100 hours from volunteer labor every week. So this varies, you know, in the summer, we'll see a lot more activity, depending on if that's adults versus youth, but we have school groups coming out during both semesters in the spring and the fall. And so we have a ton of groups and individuals that are coming out and providing support at the farms. And the training looks different depending on the age group, as well as the capacity they're coming out. Because again, with those school groups, we have education also part of that. So they're only volunteering for maybe an hour of their visit instead of a full 3 hours. But the training kind of comes by being there. So folks like to join us in March because we have volunteering from March through October, and being there throughout the entire season, you kind of learn how to farm. Because you will do everything from composting, mulching, weeding, seeding, planting, harvesting. And so it's kind of a crash course in and of itself. And there's like basic training from the get-go, and then you kind of learn as you go. And we learn as we go together. There's always moments where we're Googling, you know, like with the question of beneficial insects with the trees, like we would be Googling that on the farm together, and then kind of coming up with solutions and learning how to move forward as a more of a communal base.
Awesome. The follow-up question there is, or a separate question, and any recommendations for success for doing this work with a limited budget or without a formal nonprofit organization like farming mutual aid work on a smaller scale. And just a little shout out, a thank you to the presenters from Rachel Hoffman.
Well, not to shout us out, but we do have consulting that we offer. And so to really kind of go deeper into a response here, because this isn't my wheelhouse really, is if, there's potential for us to have a further conversation and collaborate on this, and then us even help you kind of get on your feet and do this type of work. Clinton, I don't know if you have any initial thinking, as Clinton was an incubator farmer with Windy City Harvest. So kind of thinking about how to get a business up and running from the get-go, not to put you on the spot, Clinton.
As well as in what content?
The question was around like doing small scale farming. So thinking about your incubator plots.
Yes, it's very possible for the 1/8 of acre that we worked on, that I worked on for a couple years, and farmers market and food channels, like outsourcing restaurants for bulk crops for specific reasons that are requested from these restaurants. Worked also you could do multiple farmers markets throughout the weekend, and produce well enough produce for these food channels. Yes, and it's quite an easy process to get started and to get things going, and to just steady work, and just so that you can provide, with that 1/8 of acre, provide produce every chance that is requested from your clients. Yes.
And to go further too, with our farms, we want to make sure that they are financially sustainable. And so thinking about Sauk Village, the size of It Takes a Village community farm continues to change because we keep building it out. But I think it's about an acre of production space now. And so the amount of inputs that goes into that, how through sales, just specifically through our CSA, covers that overhead cost. So for the farm manager, as well as for all those year-to-year inputs. So as we think about like conventional farming, it's not a sustainable practice because of the ways things have evolved over the past years. So when you're thinking about small scale farming, it is more possible than maybe it looks when you see these large structures that we've done, like the hoop house and everything else, just setting up some cement blocks for raised bed growing or plots in the ground for in-ground. It's a lot like Clinton's saying, there's not a huge access issue if you have land and if you have access to water. Those are kind of the biggies, and then everything else is a little bit simpler from there.
Awesome. Next question we have is, a great question. How is the water supply to the property, and how is the bill paid?
We pay the bill together. Yeah, we pay the bill together. We're not like some denominations where we don't have to pay our water bill. We do have to pay it. So yeah. Again, it's just, yeah, go ahead.
And also using water from the church itself, and paying it together. It works for where we're at and for where the water is accessible from.
I could also, the village has offered to allow the fire trucks to give us the water that they would normally just dump, and for just anywhere. They've offered that as an option as well.
Okay, following, we have a question. So bringing it back to Lenore's question on whether it's an formal or informal land agreement or land use agreement, Just Hang, I'm hoping you could speak more towards how land tenure impacts urban farming, and more widely, urban food sovereignty. So what models, values, ideas around land tenure do you lean into? Or do you have any key tips or takeaways to support land access for farming and food sovereignty?
Jess, you're asking the big questions. So Jess is actually our new programs manager, and we love her. Oh, Clinton, I thought you were going to say something. Yeah, so thinking about land tenure, like I was speaking to before, land access and water are kind of the big issues when it comes to peri-urban and urban farming. And so finding access to those two items is what's most important, and thinking about what is possible. So our specific model with Just Roots is partnering with churches to have that direct access that is already kind of being created by the churches themselves through food pantries, through connections with the community, through land that is already in their possession, and building it out from there. So I don't know if that fully answers all of your questions, but that's one piece of it. And then I might review what the other questions are and think about it as well. Oh, that second question is good. So the second question of key tips or takeaways to support land access for farming and food sovereignty. I think first and foremost is, I mean, this is the purpose of food sovereignty, is that it's community-based. And so I think, however, it can be developed in a way where not after the fact, but before the fact, the community is engaged in a process that is reflective of not only where they're currently at, but trying to go. And so just thinking about that with how we've developed It Takes a Village community farm, and then how the conversations exist with other peri-urban agriculture in the area, and how we can all work together towards something larger, and how we can use these individual farms as, again, a vehicle for change rather than just production. So instead of production spaces, Clinton spoke to this really well when he was speaking earlier, where it's like these farms are for and by the people. And so how do we create programs and engage in this movement in a way that actually ensures that? So I don't know if there's necessarily any tips, but hopefully that answers your question.
All right, I wanted to give a moment or two for people to ask any, any lingering questions you have for Celie, Reverend Melody, or Clinton. Appreciate all of the work you guys have brought in the presentation here today. A good question here. What's a favorite crop to grow?
Personally, I like to grow greens, collards, mustards, spinach, kale, kind of those greens that you could they're easy picking, but at the same time, you can eat them raw. A lot of them you can eat raw, and we can eat all of them raw. And then also you go home and throw them in a pot and make some good cooked mixed greens. That'd be my best crop to grow for the most part.
And they're incredibly prolific. So if you're looking to grow something at home or just start with something, they're hardy. They will last March through October and will give you everything and more.
Yeah.
Clinton, do you have a blog?
Do I have a blog? I do not have a blog, but I do have Instagram under Good Vibes Farm at the moment, because I do also, I'm the partner to It Takes a Village as Good Vibes Farm. And Yes, I have an Instagram, but I think about doing a blog, and then also I'm gonna do I also have a It Takes a Village Instagram that I'm just getting started. So tune into that one too as the seasons go on.
All right. We have one question with the upcoming orchard. Do you plan to use any co-growing techniques while the trees are young? Thinking along the lines of alley cropping or something in that vein.
I know nothing about growing at this point. I just let the farm managers do it all. But that's a great question.
So yeah, so co-growing as far as like companion planting, is that the question? Yeah, so yes, definitely. So in many different ways we do companion plant in specific areas where it works, and where it works to the point to where we can multiply our produce, the amount of produce and the variety of produce for specific reasons, as far as adding herbs with our tomatoes and things of that sort, to kind of diversify the growing measures of the land, and multiply grow space, definitely. And then with the orchards, no, we don't plan on co-growing with the orchards, due to wanting to keep the orchard as a different part of the site, to where it's exclusive. It's an exclusive fruit orchard tree area.
All right, there's one question we have. Any consideration to cut for a cut flower garden?
Well, we do not do flowers at the moment, so I'm not too versed in flowers at the moment, but we do have nasturtiums and zinnias and other flowers for pollinating and to attract pollinators. Um, some native plants that that grow flowers that will also help with pollination and beneficial insects. But as far as flowers for like bouquets and things of that sort, we do not do that. But I'm not opposed to it, but I'm not well versed in it all either. So
I think there is some thinking around, once we have bees on site, to increase flower production, and then to have cut flowers available. So at some of the other farms that we work with Just Roots, we have cut flower production. And so thinking about when to include it in our thinking and how that would be most beneficial to biodiversity. So right now it's more native plants oriented, and then expanding in the ways that make sense as we expand the farm.
and yes, definitely sunflowers. We would definitely incorporate sunflowers in for those multiple reasons, for water retention, and for and to beautify the site also.
There's another question. So to answer, I see Lee, Clinton, or Reverend Melody. Does anyone have any insight on how folks from a community can start a farm without partnering from an organization?
Well, yes, starting a farm, as if you're talking about a personal farm on like in your yard, or if you find land, um, pretty much zoning and pretty much going through the same route that we had to go through as the farm on site that we had now, but you just have to do that personally with your city, and and do the business and legalities that comes with it. But it's definitely a potential way to go, and a very great idea for ones to do on their own if they feel to do so.
You also have to have a plan.
Yeah.
They're going to ask for a plan. We had drawings that an architect produced for us. So it's you really need to check, like Clinton said, with your municipality to see what their guidelines or the jurisdiction is in terms of that.
And this is a kind of a follow-up question, but how could a neighborhood organize to gauge interest in food sovereignty and growing locally? So any tips for building structures without a large budget, maybe from recycled materials?
I know we have people on the team who would definitely have a lot of insight on this, from the direct building of infrastructure side of things, and even with some of our projects right now, the sourcing, I would say maybe lean away from wood, because that's incredibly expensive and has been since the start of the pandemic. We use cinder blocks. Like if you saw the raised beds, the youth beds in the photos during the slide deck, those are a lot less expensive, and also great for water retention as well as releasing. And I'm sure we have some other ideas as well. Feel free to reach out and we can connect you with the person who has even more insight there.
And definitely, Glenda, we definitely have plenty of marigolds all over the place. Well, we had in the future, in the past, and we will in the future.
All right, so there's one question. How do you choose your crop varieties? Like of all the tomatoes in the world, for example, which one do you pick and why?
So yes, with tomato varieties, we kind of looked at the varieties of why you would use them, and which ones you would use to do what with, as far as if you're going to make sauce, or if you're going to make it for cutting for salsa, or for slicing for burgers, or for whatever the case may be. And then also using determinants and indeterminants compared to how many you want, the size that you would like. So that basically, as we choose as a farm, we kind of choose to a variety of how people would be using them in their homes and in their restaurants, and how much they would grow. So as far as resistant to diseases, or how large they may grow, and things like that. So really that's just doing the knowledge and doing the research on the particular tomatoes that you're looking for what reason. If that answers your question.
Amazing. Well, thank you all so much. I appreciate all the thorough answers to the questions as well. Thank you for everyone for asking your questions. Do you have any closing remarks or last minute remarks? Anyone from It Takes a Village?
I just want to, oh, go ahead, Clinton.
I just wanted to say that I am proud to bring a farm to the South Suburbs, especially the South Village. and to the community, and to for potential to bring more opportunities for people and for the youth and for residents to beautify their neighborhood and their area, and for people to be able to have a place to stop by and learn and be able to gain experience in the agricultural world that they may not be able to obtain in their nearby area.
And I know on my end with Just Roots, we are very grateful for the partnership with Clinton, Good Vibes Farm, and now as the farm manager at It Takes a Village, as well as with Reverend Melody Seaton of Grace United Church of Christ. So it's been a great past few years. And again, like I said before, we're just going to get bigger and better. And so very grateful for the partnership and also for you all joining us today. And hopefully we see you out on the farm in the coming months.
I appreciate all the participants to come to our session, to listen to us, and to get to know us, and for us to be able to introduce ourselves.
Amazing. Well, you can all connect on the online platforms, on emails and messages. I am going to launch one poll that just kind of gets a sense of how everyone enjoyed the session, and it's useful for CIFPAC, so we can continue to provide the summit and make it an exceptional experience for both the presenters and everyone attending. So I will launch it, and it will just pop up automatically on your screen. And I'd love if you could take a moment or two to just answer the questions with thought and intention. But thank you all again so much.